I'm Claire. I'm one of the customer success managers at Schema App, and the purpose of this video is to give you a virtual onboarding tour of the Schema App Structured Data Editor. So in this tour, I'll be covering the general layout and design of the application, as well as how to work through it and create markup in the tool. Just wanted to quickly review the overall process for developing schema markup. We're going to be working in the authoring phase of this. So prior to working in the editor, our hope is that you've already completed the strategy step where you've looked at your site, understood what content is there and how you want to strategize your schema markup. And now we're going to be moving into the authoring phase. I'll give you a brief overview of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to look at your home page, so what information is displayed here and how to interpret it. We're going to cover the integration methods that allow you to automatically deploy the markup you've created. And then I'll get you familiar with the editor itself as we build custom schema markup, which is where you'll be spending the majority of your time when you're working in our tool. So when you're looking at the home page, this is an overview of your projects. So a project is the schema markup that you develop for a given website. So you can see here, you can give it a name, you can specify the website that it's deploying to. It has a unique project ID, which is generated by Schema App Editor. And then over here, you can see that you have a couple options. You can either access the editor for this project, or you could view the data items that have been created for this project. Up top, if you click on your name, you'll be able to see that you can access your settings, which would control your plan, your payments, your password, which version you're using. In this case, we're going to want to change it to all layers. And you also have some opportunities to export the data should you need to. Additionally, from here, you can see the project that you're working in, and then it allows you to toggle between projects. If you had a long list of projects, you can also search. If they exceed the first page, you can search by one of the words that you know is in the project name to quickly locate it. If you wanted to create a new project, I'll quickly show you how to do that. You'll be clicking here on the orange button that says New Project. You can give it a title. In this case, we'll be marking up the website. You click Create. And then you can see here the title of the project I just created appears. It's been given a project ID. This will delete the project if you happen to make a mistake, but in this case, you can also edit it and give it a specific URL. So in this case, we're going to be marking up the home page, so I'll just grab that. And you can choose the type of deployment method that you're going to be using as well. So now that that has been added, I'm going to want to go into that project and start looking at the editor. Before we dive into the editor, I'll briefly review the integration methods available to you. So once again, our integration methods allow you to select how you want to automatically deploy the schema markup from the editor to your website. One of the more common options is to use a WordPress plugin. From here, you'll click WordPress plugin. One important piece of information that you'll need to capture is your account ID. You'll be entering this ID into the settings of the plugin. The other thing you'll want to do is to install it, download and install the WordPress plugin. So there's instructions here. It will come as a zip file. You'll want to get that installed and then you're ready to go. The option for integration is JavaScript. So if you navigate to the left-hand side, choose JavaScript integrations, you'll see the various options available to you. Depending on your method, if you expand it, you'll see that there's specific steps and the script tag. You simply follow the steps, copy in the JavaScript, and you're ready to go. Let's dive into using the structured data editor, as this is where you'll be spending most of your time when you're working in our tool. Before we begin, I want to show you the three main panels in our tool. So in the upper left, you'll see the class tree. So this is representative of the schema.org vocabulary. So if you're not familiar with schema.org site, you can navigate to schema.org and you'll be able to see all of the classifications that exist. Our tree mimics that vocabulary. The other thing you'll notice down here in the bottom left is this will show you the instances of a given schema class that you've created. So right now we don't have any and I haven't selected one to search for, but depending on what you've selected, if you had any that existed, it would list them below. In this case, since we're starting brand new, there's nothing there to select. The other is the resource panel, which gives you additional information on the selection that you've made. So in this case, it gives you a description. If we had any training videos associated with this, you would see them listed here as well. You can use the class tree to either navigate to what you're looking for or use the search field. So in this case, I'll just show you, we're going to be looking at local business markup today. So I know that that resides as a subclass of organization. So I can search the class tree for local business. And then depending on how specific you're able to get, there are even more definitions of a local business that you could choose. Alternatively, you can also search for local business and select it that way. You can see that you can get quite specific. So there's cafe or coffee shop, internet cafe. We're going to stick with local business. So once you've selected local business, you can click create, and that will take you to creating your data item. And I just wanted to show you the way that our tool is organized. So you'll notice up top, it reminds me that I've created a local business data item. This is the name I gave it. This was the URI that I specified. And then I can see that in the form builder, there are different headings. So the first is required field, the second is recommended fields, and down below is other fields. So we list every property that's available to a given class so that you can fully leverage the schema.org vocabulary. The reason these categories exist is to align with Google's documentation that it calls out for eligibility for a given rich result, both the required fields and those that it recommends. Whenever we're speaking with our clients, our recommendation is that you focus on the required fields, because if you do not have these, you are not eligible for the rich result that you're going after. Next is to fill out as many of the recommended fields as possible. A guiding principle when you're thinking about your structured data, which was covered in the strategy step of our process, is you need to have the content to support filling out these fields. So if there's something that you notice in one of the required or recommended fields that you do not have content for on your site or the page that you're trying to mark up, you need to have that content available to a human being reading the page in order to mark it up. That's the guideline that we abide by. Finally, down at the bottom, you'll notice other fields. So the way that we like to think about this is what else is important about your brand or your site or your product that you want to call out. So it's not a challenge. You do not need to fill out every single one of these. Take a read through, see what you have the content to support, see what makes sense for your brand or your business, and add that in. A good example is founder. For some businesses, such as maybe a dentistry office or a law firm, the founders are a really important part of that company's brand, and it'd be worthwhile calling out who they are. Another example might be Apple, where Steve Jobs has a Wikipedia page and he's an important public figure, and it's relevant to the brand who the founder of that company is. This would be a good time to use that field. The next thing I'd like to explain is how to interpret what the tool is expecting from you. So you'll see sometimes, like right here, it says enter text ... This means it's a free form text entry and you can type what you'd like into it. At other times in faint gray text, this is indicating to you that we're expecting a data item for this field. So the address for your local business is expecting a postal address data item. The image is expecting a thing or an image object. And then below, you can see it gives further clarification around what is expected. So as you scroll through, you'll be able to see that the field either explains that you'll have to enter text, or it's looking for a data item to either create or link to. The other thing that you're able to do in our tool is to hover over the label of a field to better understand what's expected. So for instance, when I hover over name, it's saying the name of the item. If I hover over geo, it's telling me that I should be entering the geo coordinates of this place. So whenever you need a little more clarification on what a field means, feel free to hover over the label, and in most cases, it will tell you what is expected. Another thing I wanted to call out is that for images, you also have the ability to enter a URL. So for local business, there are two places where I can put an image URL. One is an image from the page itself, and then the other is the local business's logo. So as I scroll down, they're in alphabetical order. And I can see here that Google requires the logo to be either an image object or a URL. And the way that I would grab the URL for an image is simply to go to the page that I'm doing the markup for, right-click on the logo, and you'll see here it says copy image address. In that case, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy it, and then I can paste the URL directly into that field and simply click done. And you'll notice that as soon as I have a valid entry, that error that it was showing me previously has disappeared. Same thing, I'm going to go back to our page. I'll grab another image and I can put that in as the image for the page and just click done. And once again, I see that that has resolved the error for that field. In summary, you'll either be able to enter free-form text, you'll be able to link or create data items when it's expected, and for things like images, you can simply put in a URL. Now we're going to go ahead and complete our data item for our local business. You'll notice that when you're in this overview, there are icons that show you if you have any current errors or warnings. So you can hover over these to get a better understanding of what those errors or warnings are. And then when you click edit and go into the data item itself, you'll see those with a more fleshed out interpretation of the error or warning. So we're going to go ahead and complete this form for Schema App. So the first thing it's telling me is required is a postal address. And I can tell based on this gray text saying postal address that it is wanting me to create a postal address data item. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that field, and I'm going to click add data item. So the name I will give it is Schema App Address. This is on our home page, as I'll show you in a moment, and it's going to be a postal address. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And you'll notice again, as in earlier videos, it's taken our homepage URL and it has appended a hashtag postal address to differentiate it from other data items that we're creating that reside on the same page. So when I go over to my homepage, down in the footer, I can see that our address is listed here. So you can literally just copy and paste. So this is the street address that I just copied. The country is Canada. The locality refers to the city. So we are in Guelph and our province is Ontario, which is considered a region. So your state or province will be the region, and then the postal code is equivalent to the zip code if you are in the United States. So once that's done, I'm going to click done. And now I can see up the top it said all changes saved, and I now see this little linked symbol indicating that it's linked to the data item that I've named Schema App Address. The next thing it's telling me I require is an image. We had done that in an earlier step. It already has a name and then the URL. So the URL I'll just grab from the address bar. So that is my home page. And you can see as soon as I click out of that field, the warning has been satisfied. So recommended fields is what we'll look at next. In this case, we do not have an aggregate rating on our homepage, so I won't be filling that out. We are not a department within another broader organization, so I'll leave that. But I do have opening hours on our homepage. So I'm going to go ahead and add opening hours specification. So again, I can tell that based on this gray text, it's going to want me to create a data item. So I'm going to go add data item, and I'm going to call this Schema App Opening Hours. I can leave the URL as is because those opening hours reside on our homepage, and this is going to be an opening hours specification type. I'll click create. And now you can see here, a new form has opened up with the recommended fields for opening hours. So what this means is that there are no required fields. Otherwise, the required would have been shown first. And by just toggling on this, you can expand and collapse. Alternatively, if you wanted to look at the full item with every single field available to you, you can click here to go open full data item, and it'll take you to a screen that shows the opening hours data item in full. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and select my days of the week. So I know from the home page that it says we're open Monday to Friday from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm going to need to add a day of the week for each day that we're open. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we close at 1700. And we open at 0900. So you can just scroll through until you get the correct time. And we don't have dates that this is valid from or through, so I'm going to leave that. One thing I do want to note is if you have different hours, for instance, on a Saturday, say on Saturdays we might be open from noon to 4, you would need to create a new data item and call that Schema App opening hours Saturday, or something that differentiates it from the Monday through Friday hours. You can group any days of the week together that have the same opening and closing, but any day that has a different opening and closing, you'll want to create a separate data item. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and click Done. And so now I have given it opening hours, and you can see that it's indicating it's linked to a data item, and I no longer have a warning appear underneath there. We do not have any reviews. I do have a phone number, however, so I can see here that it's listed with the country code. You'll need the country code for a telephone. So if you're unsure of what your country code is, I recommend just Googling it. But for Canada and the United States, it's +1. So it's +1, and then I've put the rest of the phone number in there. And as soon as I click out, it's resolved the error. Then I can look through these other fields and take a look at what's available to me. So scrolling through, I know that we have already populated the logo in an earlier step. So if I scroll down to logo, I'll see that we have an image in there. One thing I do want to enter though is a contact point. So again, a contact point I can see here is expecting another data item. I'm going to click there and go add data item. So this will be Schema App contact point. And a contact point is a way for someone to get in touch with you. And in this case, instead of leaving the URL as the home page, we actually have a contact us page. So, excuse me, I'm going to, instead of having the homepage URL, I'm going to use the contact page URL. So I'm going to just switch that over and then leave this as a contact point. So now I can click create. In this case, our phone number is used for both customer support and sales. So I'll go ahead and just choose customer support. If you had a different one, a different phone number or contact for those different departments, you could create multiple contact points and just name them appropriately depending on what the department is. So in here, the telephone, I can once again enter that phone number, and I can expand here to see what are the recommended fields. So language, if I were to leave this blank, it would pre-populate as English, but I can also put EN. And then the contact option, we have 2 here. In this case, our phone number is toll-free, so I'll go ahead and select that. If you did not have a number that was either toll-free or hearing impaired, you could just leave that field blank. You do not need to fill out a recommended field if it doesn't apply. Once again, if you wanted to see all of the other options, you could go open full data item. In this case, I'm going to click done. And that has populated. I now have my logo and my image covered. I have my opening hours specification. I have my contact point. I have my address filled in. And the only other thing I wanted to show you is if you had a more specific business, a great way to define that is to use the additional type. So you could use this field to reference a Wikipedia definition that further clarifies the type of business you have. So within Schema App, the editor, a good example of this is if you operated a cafe, you could use the local business subclass of cafe or coffee shop, which means it would have the schema vocabulary that pertains to that class. But then you could also use the additional type field to select cafe or coffee shop as a Wikipedia definition to further add clarification around what type of business you have. So once you've filled in everything that makes sense and you have content to support, you can go ahead and save your work. And you'll notice here the other thing that we've already done in an earlier step was to populate our same as fields. So I'm satisfied with what I've done. All my changes have saved automatically, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Done. And it takes me back. I can see that I've resolved the one error that I had previously, and I've resolved 3 of the 7 warnings, leaving me with 4. And again, I can hover to see what it recommends that I fill out. So that covers off how to populate your local business markup. Another thing I wanted to show you was how to navigate amongst your data items when you're working in the editor. So I'm going to click into Schema App opening hours as an example. Down at the bottom, it will tell you if this data item is being used by any other data items. So I can see here that my data item Schema App opening hours is being used as the opening hours specification for my local business markup. And if I click here, that takes me back to my local business data item. You'll also be able to see if you have multiple of the same type. Down here, it will show you all instances of that particular type of markup. The other way you can kind of get an overview of what markup you've created is by going back over to your data items. So if you click here, you'll be able to see everything that you've created. There's also a filter available to you where you can select a certain type. So if you only wanted to look at your postal address data items, you could select that from the list and it would narrow it down. If you want to go back to local business, you can do so. And then again, you get a reminder of any errors or warnings that you have for that data item. Another thing that I wanted to show you is how to check your work as you go. So as you're creating your markup, not only do you get some indication of errors or warnings here, but the other thing you can do is actually look at the code that is being developed as you work. So up at the top, you can go View JSON-LD. You'll see here that this is what the JSON-LD looks like for the work that you've done. If you've done recent changes, I recommend just hitting refresh just to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date version of the code. And the other tool we have is the ability to test it with the Google Structured Data Testing tool from our editor. So if you click there, it will open up a new window, take you to Google Structured Data Testing tool. You can click on the circle in the middle of the screen, and that will pull up what Google's Structured Data Testing tool shows as a result. So you can see here that I have no errors in the markup that I've created. I have one warning indicating that it recommends a price range, which I opted not to fill out. And I even can click on the preview button to get a preview of what my rich result would look like for local business markup. The final thing I wanted to show you was just these blue buttons at the top of the tool. So you have a few options when you're working in the editor in terms of what to do with your data item. If you were creating multiple data items that were similar but not identical, a way to save some time is to clone them. So you would use this clone action. It indicates what the old URI was. You would give it a new URI. So for instance, if you had 2 of the same data items living on the homepage, you might want to name it local business 2 or local business A, something like that to differentiate from the other one. And then you would give it a new name. As soon as you've done that, you can hit clone and it will take you into that new data item. You can once again click edit and then make any changes required that would differentiate one from the other. The other action at the top is move to. So you have the ability to move this data item to another account. So by clicking here, it will load the other accounts. This is taking a bit longer because we have many accounts in this particular profile, but you can then select which account you'd like to move the data item to, and it will export it to that project. We've already looked at viewing the JSON-LD. If you wanted to test in the Structured Data Testing tool without viewing the code first, you can do that here. If you wanted to delete the data item entirely, you have the opportunity to do that from this button. And then changing the item's URI is another option you might want to take advantage of. If you notice, for instance, that either you've made an error in the URI where you want it to deploy to, or if it needs a trailing slash and doesn't have one, or if you just simply have changed your URL naming convention of your site and all the data can stay the same, but you'd like the URI to be different, you can simply go change item URI. It shows you what the old one was. It prompts you to enter a new one, and then you can quickly change the URI. In summary, this video showed you how to create projects in the editor. It gave you a general overview of how to use our tool, a walkthrough of how to populate a data item, and then tips on how to check your work and get an overview of all of the data items that you've created for a given project. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel where we have a number of other videos and tutorials to help you in your schema markup journey. Thank you.